All right, joining us. Well, I say joining us right now. I'm always open. Luke and I recorded this thing. I won't say the time, but it's probably prime time for Luke and too late for me. But he joins us, Coach Luke Walton. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm doing well. We, we're getting close to heading to Orlando, and we've got a little bit of unfortunate news today, and nothing that's too unexpected, but we decided just to be safe, kind of close down the facility for the next couple of days before we take off. But we're excited to be back together and be able to have the opportunity to play some basketball again.
Well, before we get into the X's and O's of starting back up, I just got to ask you, you're the coach, but you're human, and you're not that far removed from being a player. I won't ask you, there's no experience. There's no previous going through any of this, but you're a young guy with a young family. How are you split on this? Are you gung ho? Like, how do you feel about all this taking off to Orlando?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm very open with our players and our staff as far as this has got to be a personal decision made for everybody. And the decision I've made is that I feel comfortable enough going. I think that if you're gonna be in a bubble and quarantine once we get there, there's always going to be that risk. But that's something that I've come to terms with and I've accepted. And once I've made that decision, it's something I'm comfortable with for myself. But I've made it very clear to my staff and all of our players that if they don't feel comfortable, there's no judgment going on. There's no, it won't cost them playing time down the road next season or whatnot. And it's got to be something that everybody individually is comfortable with. And with that being said, most of the people in our organization opted in. And from there, it got challenging because we had to cut our travel party down to 30, 35, 37 total, but two of those spots were mandatory through the NBA, and 35 people coming on our travel party as far as players, training staff, and coaches.
I'm glad to hear that, because I imagine that had to weigh on you, because I know you're a pretty chill dude with that stuff, just in general with people, but I have to imagine that's a point you had to underline 3 or 4 times, because you got to think it's sports, it's macho, it's locker room, there's a lot of testosterone flowing around. I imagine it was a challenge for you, at least, to make sure people really understood, dude, nobody's going to look at you as a coward or whatever if you don't go, that people can truly feel free to opt in or out without anybody raising eyebrows at them.
Yeah, and it's important because most times, and being a former player myself, it's one of the beautiful things about basketball is it kind of takes you away, and it's an escape for you, no matter what's going on in your life. But this is one of those times that's not the case. This is such an unknown thing that's going around right now that it has to be an individual decision. And I think once you make that decision, and a lot of our guys have been great, the energy in the building has been awesome. Guys are excited to work out. Guys are excited to see each other, even though it's been in a restricted form. It's still, I think, it's been very healing for a lot of the guys and in our group, and it's been fun to go into the office and kind of say hello to some people and get in the film room and start watching some film again. So it's been therapeutic in a sense, but yeah, it's one of those things you can't with this you can't really pressure or force people to join in. You got to be understanding and let them know that it's fine either way.
Luke Walton with us, and I like that not only did you play in the league for a long time, but you're not far removed at all from playing in the league, so you kind of have both sides of the mentality. When you're do you see it as a challenge? Are you worried at all about kind of walking that line between, guys, I know you're young and we're in Orlando and you're cooped up for God knows how long, and also kind of laying down the coach end, which is we have to be responsible. You can't do this, you can't do that. Last thing we need is one guy going down. I imagine that's kind of a tightrope between mothering these guys and also treating them like the adults and young men that they are.
Yeah, but it's that part of it's been easier because it's it's my responsibility as a coach, but it's also part of our responsibility as teammates and NBA players amongst the NBA families, and then just as human beings to look. We're going to be in very close contact with each other and with other players, and it's definitely a thing where the NBA is a league full of men, a lot of which have their own families and whatnot. So it's easy for me to be pretty straightforward and strict with that messaging. Now, it doesn't mean everybody's going to listen, but as far as the messaging is delivered, it's about doing the right thing. And even if you feel completely confident yourself that even if you were to get sick, you'd be fine, it's about not putting other people at risk too. So that messaging has been going on since our guys have, even before our guys returned, honestly, on some of our Zoom calls, with, the doctor included on these Zoom calls, just preaching that message of, look, it's not just about us, it's about doing the right thing for the people that are close to us, and eventually when we all get back together for each other. So that's been something we've been preaching pretty consistently.
Yeah, I'm very curious coming into this conversation. I was doing some math in my head, and it's not exact, but for the teams that make it deep in the playoffs or even the finals, the difference between middle of June and end of September when training camp started, that's almost it's a little more, but it's almost the amount of time since you guys were about to face the Pelicans. And by the time you get back to playing again, it's going to be around that same time. So, Luke, you had to make this decision at some point, I would imagine. Do you go into this as an extension of the season, rotations, jobs won, jobs lost, all that? Or are you looking at this as like a brand new season and a brand new training camp, just as you'd be entering in the media day at the end of September and scrimmages at the start of October?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a balance for us. I think when you look at the teams like us and the Pelicans, the Spurs, Portland, it's a new season in the sense that we have 8 games to try to get ourselves into that playoff spot. And if you're one of those other teams that's in the playoffs, no matter what the 8 games look, I mean, some of them will be fighting for seeding, but for the most part, I feel like those teams are going to be looking at it as straight extension of this past season that got suspended, as far as just mainly concerning about getting their rhythm and their rotations down by the time those 8 games are up. For us, we're coming into camp with conditioning being a priority with, hey, we know who was playing great, but between people possibly getting sick, other people getting healthy, it's also, so it's also, hey, whoever's playing at the highest level right now is going to play, because we only have 8 games. It's not like, we find our rhythm in the season. Like it's coming out of the gates with whoever's playing the best. But what goes into that equation, where it becomes the balance, is what goes into that equation is also using, kind of how we ended this season, where certain groups were playing well together. So we keep that in mind. But if there's certain guys that show up and in the 3 weeks of camp we have in Orlando are playing at a higher level than others, for whatever reason that would be, we're going to go with those guys.
Luke Walton with us. It reminds me, listening to guys like, we haven't had a ton of success, as you know, here in Sacramento over the years, but when we did, guys like Bobby Jackson, Vlade, Chris Webber would always say that some of the best games they ever played were in practice, because you had a second unit that could, they thought fought for the playoffs back in the early 2000s. So for you as a coach, you've got a very good but very big problem, and no pun intended. You've got Rashawn Holmes, who was arguably the MVP of the season for much of it. He's healthy. Marvin Bagley, with all that potential, he's healthy. Alex Len came in, kicked absolute ass. He's healthy. Harry Giles, same thing. He's healthy. You've got this glut, for example, up front. And are you just kind of blank slating the whole thing, if I'm hearing you right, and let's see who's playing well, let's see who's in rhythm, and that's who we're going with?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And that you probably nailed the position that we're looking at closest with what's going on there with some of those bigs. And everything you said is exactly what we bring up and have talked about in our coaches meetings. And those points again they'll hold some weight. As far as Rashawn, is you just as easily as anyone else on our team, you could call him the MVP of when he was healthy this year, of what we, some of the success we started having in Alex and Marvin and all of that. So that's all taken into consideration. But again, when you got 8 games to make up some ground and to try to put ourselves in the best spot possible to get into the playoffs, we're going to go with whoever's playing at the highest level, and that's that'll be determined in those 3 weeks leading up to the first game.
And in your perfect world, Luke, and I don't want you to play your hand here as a Kings fan, but do you kind of look at it as maybe an ace in the hole, where worst/best case scenario, all those guys are playing top level. You're going to have these other teams coming in. Everyone's going to be out of shape. But is your mind, your coaching staff's mind, maybe open to, okay, maybe in that situation nobody's playing 35 minutes, maybe we're going 10, 10, 10, 10, 5-minute rotations, whatever it may be, where we've got fresh big bodies on the floor at all times. You got this like 5-headed monster with maybe a departure from what you do over 82 as opposed to 8.
Yeah, and that can go either way.
Yeah.
And a lot of that will be dependent on where we're at. And, we've been working very close with our medical staff, who's done a great job of giving us projections and explaining to us load management, which is, not the load management which you normally hear as far as like minutes restrictions, but where guys are at physically. And we're watching, what other leagues, for example, there's a German soccer league, I think, started up early, maybe the first professional league to get going again. And there was a ton of injuries out of the gate, right? So these are all things that they're kind of going to be monitoring during the training camp in Orlando. And it might be a case where it's like, look, you can play guys however long you want, but there's a very high risk of injury right now because of where we're at and where we need to be at when you're normally playing an NBA season. And if that's the case, then it could be by committee. And let's not forget, Harry Giles is playing great too.
Yep.
And since he's been back, he's looked physically really good again. So it could be by committee. It could be look, it's time. It's playoff time. We're playing 8 people 35 minutes a night, and that's it. It could be game by game. A matchup that looks great for Alex Len tonight, or if Marvin's having a big night, something like that. So during the season, you like to be more consistent with it and balance those things out, and know that you're going to win and lose some, but over 82, you're going to get to where you're trying to get as long as you're moving in the same direction. Right now, it's all that's out the window. It's 8 games. What can we do? What can we do to put ourselves in the best position to win each and every night that we're there? And we just won't know the answer to that until we get into Orlando and ultimately through those few weeks of training.
You have a good mix of youth and veterans too. I'm curious in this situation. Do you see that having those young legs? I mean, the obvious advantage with young legs is everything we just talked about, but you have to balance it with that vet leadership. None of these guys, or a lot of these guys, haven't been to the playoffs before. So I imagine, Luke, your job is as much physical with these guys as mental.
Yeah, and it is a good combination of guys, and you're able to rely on guys like Harrison and Corey and Bazemore, that have been around and been in playoffs and that, and then the mix of the youth that you want to have to really be able to push it coming out of the gate. And then, we'll see what it looks like on other teams. Normally older players, kind of start to, save. They know that what they need and what they need to save to get into the playoffs. But I'm assuming most of those guys are going to be pretty fresh as well. So, it's such an unknown right now on how this whole thing is going to play out, that it's, we talk about all the hypotheticals and possible situations. There just won't be a clear answer until we get there. And, even once we get there, there's a good chance that somebody, whether our team or someone other team will get sick. It's just, the numbers are that high right now that I think we'd be naive to think that in the bubble nobody will get sick. So part of that will come into play. And we've also talked about that with our team. Like a big part of who succeeds in Orlando will be what team can handle all the madness and all the chaos, players in, players out, from a mental standpoint. And that's something that I want our guys to acknowledge and then embrace it. And it has the chance to be a great opportunity for our group, whether it's finishing up this year or building us closer going into next year. If we can develop that mindset, it'll be a great opportunity for our team.
Coach Luke Walton with us. And Coach, one thing before we go, I wanted to pick your brain on. I'm a huge mixed martial arts fan watching the UFC. One thing we've noticed without crowds is you're able to hear the corners a lot more. They have to be very careful about what they call out to their fighter. Same thing with play-by-play guys. The fighters have actually remarked they can hear the play-by-play guys calling out moves before they happen, and it's helped them defensively. I don't even know if you've begun to wrap your head around this because you have so much on your mind, but do you feel like maybe once you get down there, no fans, there's going to be some adjustments coach-wise, verbally talking with players talking on defense, etc., or does like maybe a summer league or something in the past help inform you on how weird this is going to be and how to function within it?
Yeah, it's going to be strange. I don't think anything can prepare us for this. I mean, we're talking about nobody, empty arenas. And, even Summer League, you get a couple thousand fans in there. I think to your point, being able to communicate with your players through hand signals as opposed to yelling out the plays like you do a lot during the games and normal games is something you'll see, teams and coaches relying on more, calling players over to whisper something in their ear as opposed to yelling it to them. Will be part of it. I remember when I first got into coaching, I was helping out the G League team down in LA, and I picked up a technical foul because I cursed what I thought was kind of just like a normal, normal yelling at the ref, and it was there's maybe 100 people in the gym, and boy, as soon as it came out of my mouth, I could tell the whole arena heard it. I was an assistant coach. I got teed up. It wasn't my proudest moment, but I've learned from that. So we're going to have to at least take that into consideration. I think Adam Silver even addressed that the other day, as far as having like a delay from the game to what we're seeing on TV. But yeah, there's so many little things like that are keeping myself and my staff, and I'm sure every staff that's going pretty busy right now, just as far as trying to plan for everything. And then, just like you brought that up, the next day someone else will bring up a little thing. I'm like, damn, we haven't got into that. But yeah, another good point, another possibility, and just trying to be as prepared as possible.
You remember what the fine was back in the G League for a technical foul for an assistant?
I think it was somewhere between $50 or $100.
Okay, all right.
So there's a ratio to the G League players as opposed to the I think up to $2,000. I think is what we get knocked now for technical fouls. But they're much nicer down there in the G League when it comes to fine system.
Well, one thing too, I mean, going into this, I can tell you there's one person, there's one member of your team you're not going to have back next year regardless, and it's not from a trade, it's not from free agency. Well, I guess free agency maybe, but Coach Igor getting a big job and moving on. As I understand, he's sticking with you guys throughout the year, and I imagine, I'd say it's bittersweet, but I'll bet it's more sweet than bitter for you seeing somebody you love and respect getting a big boost and doing his thing, even though I'm sure you'll miss him on the sidelines.
Yeah, we'll miss him, and he's been great all year. He's a brilliant basketball mind, and it's an amazing opportunity for him. So you're always you're a little sad to see someone that you really enjoy working with and someone that helps the team go, but you got to be way more happy for the guy, and it's an amazing opportunity, and I'm sure he'll do great. And we were lucky to have him, and he wants to finish out the year with the group, which I respect out of him. What he signed up to do, and then we'll have a dinner and a good time, and send him on his way.
I assume you'll be polo shirt and shorts. You're not going suit there, are you?
No, they gave us the option. That normally I'm all about bringing it to the table and hearing what my staff thinks on issues.
Right.
But when they put that on the table, being in Orlando in July and August, it's going to be Kings collared polos and slacks for me and the staff.
Attaboy. All right. Well, listen, it's late at night, even though people are listening in the morning. And like you said, you got the ultimate crash course going on right now. So to even cut out 20 minutes is appreciated. I'm sure we'll talk between now and then. But, Luke, it's just nice to talk some damn basketball for a change. I hope at some point we can talk wins and losses and maybe even break a playoff streak.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's good to be back on your show talking hoops, and it'd be nice to do that. So we'll stay in touch, and hopefully Orlando turns out to be a good trip for us.
It's the Carmichael Dave Show on Sports 1140 KHCK.